Hi there folks, Ryath here from Tabletop Minis, and welcome to our review of the new Battletome Disciples of Tzeentch. So this has been quite a eagerly anticipated release. We've seen from Games Workshop, we've seen lots of the pictures before the releases of the new models, and in the Silver Tower box we've seen some of the Acolytes and Zangors and stuff, so it's a really cool book. I've also got the dice to go with it, and we'll talk about why these are so important later when we get into the rules. But we'll do a quick kind of gloss over the book, over the fluff and stuff, and then we'll dig into the War Scroll battalions and War Scrolls and just talk a little bit about my kind of first impressions on the book. So let's have a look. So we'll start with the cover. It's a really nice artwork here for the Lord of Change. I really like it. The Lord of Change is kind of a bit more grand than the old one, and that looks really ace. That's nice artwork on the inlay. And then the standard kind of passage about the Age of Sigmar beginning at the start. And then we dive straight into the background on Tzeentch. The story's moved forward slightly where kind of, the Stormcast have made their kind of mark on the mortal realms now. And Tzeentch is kind of rising and Khorne is being subdued. So, Khorne being Tzeentch's brother, he was kind of the number one chaos god, but Tzeentch is kind of taking, he's uprising at the moment. So that's really cool. So just a bit of fluff here, more nice artwork, just talking about, who Tzeentch are, their relationship to Khorne, and, setting the sort of storyline a little bit. The whole book, it doesn't move the storyline forward very much, it just kind of describes where we are now in the story with, the Stormcast having come down to retake the mortal realms, and in all of these cities like Hammerhal and so on, these Tzeentch cults that are being kind of planted by Tzeentch, and how they kind of interact with the cities, and how they kind of plot and plan things, and that's really what the Arcanites are kind of all about. They're like a kind of covert cult that kind of merges into society, and then they come out and they fight battles and key stuff from time to time whenever it's Tzeentch's wish, I guess. So here we've got a Veritant and the new Changeling. So there's a new model for him as well. A little bit of background here on where Tzeentch is, the Crystal Labyrinth, and talking about kind of Silver Towers, and just some more fluff there. Children of Change, so just carry on with the fluff. Scintillating Hosts. It was quite a nice read actually, because I'm not that familiar with Tzeentch myself. I don't usually play Chaos, so we've got a small Khorne army, but I've never had a Tzeentch army before. But I'm really looking forward to this army for a lot of reasons. The color schemes and the painting possibilities are amazing. So here it talks about the 9 different convocations within Tzeentch. So at any time there's only 9 convocations, which are like basically huge Tzeentch armies, and I think they you've got 9 Gaunt Summoners as well, each with a Silver Tower. So the number 9 is really important for Tzeentch, and just some background description on each of them, just to give you some kind of ideas yourself. If you want to make your own convocation or coven or host, just some ideas there. And some nice art here, talking about some of the artifacts, and some nice picture work. And we've got a kind of an alphabet here in symbols, which would be quite cool to kind of paint onto your models if you want. A lot of the Tzeentch have these kind of runic markings everywhere. And then over here there's a Volkark. That's actually a bird that comes with the Carrick Acolytes, which we'll see later. Same with the Scrolls of the Secret Ire and Spiteful Shield. That's an artifact, the Paradoxal Shield, and just some other cool stuff there. So the Tzeentch forces are really split into kind of the Arcanites and the Demons, although they can be together in armies. But you'll see as we get to the War Scroll battalions at the back that if you want some of the special bonuses, you really have to kind of choose. if you want to play everything in, to limit your number of drops and so on, you want to play it all within kind of War Scroll battalions. But the Arcanites, they're, like I said before, the kind of acolytes and so on that are hiding in these cities or forests and so on, and they, most of the time the inhabitants of the city aren't aware of them, and then they just kind of in a flash they turn into their acolyte form, and then they can cause carnage. So it's a pretty cool idea. It does dig into that a little bit, but we're not going to kind of linger on the fluff too much. And the arch conspirators, so just more fluff here. And then here we get to the structure of an Arcanite cult. So you'll see when we get to the back to the War Scrolls as well, this is kind of how it's formed. You basically have an Arcanite cabal, which is the kind of the leaders of the cult, which is magisters, Tzeentch shamans, or fate masters. And then you've got henchmen, which sometimes come along, the Ogroid thaumaturges and the Curselings. And then honored guests is the Gaunt Summoners, which they're kind of under the Ever-Chosen. I think Tzeentch gave the Gaunt Summoners to Archaon or they gave the names of the Gaunt Summoners to Archaon at some point, so Archaon now kind of controls them. But they can come along for the Arcanite army as well. And then below the kind of leadership here, we've got the different covens. So the main forces in the Tzeentch book here, we've got the acolytes, which are like the kind of, well, I'll show you later, the kind of like chaff for your army almost, but they've got some pretty cool rules as well. And then we have the Tzeentch, which are like kind of mutated beastmen. They're a lot smarter than normal beastmen, and they've got their own like kind of magic and so on. So Tzeentch Enlightened, they're like the hand-to-hand Tzeentchs, and they ride discs, or they can ride discs. And Skyfires, which are pretty cool. They're like a shooting unit with 24-inch range. They can put out some mortal wounds. They're pretty tough. So the covens here, Witchfire Coven, Alterkin Coven, and Skyshoal Coven, they're actual formations in the back, and we'll get to that in a little while. So just talking here about the henchmen and honored guests and so on, how they all fit in. And then some of the marks of change, so just more background on different icons or different cults, and some details on them. And as usual in these new Battletomes, they give you some ideas for color schemes. Tzeentch is probably the best army ever if you like putting different bright and vibrant colors on your models. There's so many different choices, and they all look really good. I'm really looking forward to painting this army. So here we've got some acolytes, and then we have some Tzeentch, and they've even shown some of the different cults having kind of tattoo markings. So some really good ideas there, and the skin tones are quite wildly different across the different acolytes or different cults. And these birds, they're the Volcarks that we talked about before on the acolytes. And then some of the beastmen's integrate, manifest lurid colors and patterns. The variations are endless, so it's basically telling you, you can paint them however you like, and it should be okay fluff-wise. And then we have a little bit of a timeline here. It doesn't really say so much. Kind of starting here, undermining the foundation. So that's kind of what Tzeentch has been doing. It's kind of undermining Sigmar's efforts to reclaim the mortal realms. If you read any of the background fluff books as well, the Changeling, he basically kind of manifested himself as the architect for some of these great cities, or the new cities, and they've been made on top of this realm stone, which is like physical magic. Is basically Tzeentch has placed these cities in very vulnerable places through various conniving and scheming and so on. So it's pretty cool. So undermining the foundation, led by the Changeling, many of the new cities were founded upon realmstone, great deposits of solidified magic, and the Arcanite cults begun. And then it just goes on to kind of give a bit more details of some examples of the battles and so on that have been going on. but it doesn't really move this storyline forward so much. Then we've got a description of all the units. So you would have probably seen the new model for the Lord of Change and Kairos Fateweaver. That's a box that can be assembled as either. Looks really nice. Definitely going to get that when it comes out. Kairos has been slightly nerfed as well. They've changed his war scroll to be so he can't change the priority order, the turn order. But he's still pretty cool. I didn't really like the older model, even though I've got it. But yeah, and then some background on the Changeling and the Herald of Tzeentch. And then Flamers and Screamers. These are really cool. They may be overpointed, but there's some formations that can use them really effectively. So it'll be to see. It'll be to see whether they can be put into competitive lists and work really well. But they put out quite a lot of mortal wounds, so I can see myself using some of them. And then we've got this kind of the horrors, you know, the pink horrors. When they die, they turn into 2 blue horrors, which then, when they die, turn into brimstone horrors. So them models are going to come out as well. If you've got Silver Tower, you probably have a few of them. Some pretty cool, like comic book style art. Just a little description of them here. And then we have the Tzangor Shamans. So this is a new model coming out, on pre-order this week. So should be able to get it next week, along with the Skyfires and the Tzangor Enlightened. They're pretty cheap, 120 points, and really good because they give bonuses to, Skyfires and to Enlightened. So not that survivable, but I quite like them. And if you run an Arcanite Cabal, which is basically the center of your Arcanite army, you will be using these because they're quite points efficient and they do some really nice things. They basically give extra spells to everybody in the Cabal. Then we've got the Ogroid Thaumaturge, which is a really cool model, but I think points wise it's maybe a little too much for what it is, but we'll get to that later. And the Gaunt Summoners, which are really nice as well. And Magisters. So the Magister is part of the Arcanite Cabal. The Gaunt Summoner, he's just kind of an extra follower, like we showed in that chart before. And then we have the Fate Masters, which they're not wizards, but they're quite powerful warriors. They get 4+ mortal wound save. They're pretty tanky, I would say, but we'll talk about that more when we get into the War Scrolls. And then Cursed-Lings, which are super good at unbinding. So if they successfully unbind a spell, an enemy spell, then they can immediately cast it. So even in your opponent's hero phase, if he tries to cast a spell, your Curseling can unbind it, and if he's successful, he can cast it straight back at them in their own turn, which is just amazing. And on top of that, you can, if you make him your general, you can unbind up to 27 inches rather than 18. So that's kind of, when I get to the kind of lists I've been thinking about, this is kind of what I'm thinking about, using the Curseling as my general for that. Which is really good. And then quite a bit of fluff just about the Tzangors, just telling you that they're beastmen with warped and shaped by the Architect of Fate. So they're quite good. They're 2 wins each. Then the Carrick Acolytes, which are the guys who, with the beastmen, they have to kind of stay in forests and out of sight of the civilizations, but the Acolytes, they can kind of hide within the cities and just kind of posing as, it could be like from all levels and ranks, infiltrating organizations and so on for Tzeentch. And then we get onto some pictures, so some lovely models, new models coming out. These Lords of Changes look just immense. They're kind of about the same size as the Bloodthirster. If you've been watching the Warhammer live stream, you've probably seen they were showing one off this week. There we have the new Changeling model, which I'm not too keen on compared to the old one actually, but maybe when we get a better picture close up, we'll talk about it. So there we have the Blue Scribes, the new Changeling, and the Lord of Change and some horrors. But if you see with the new Changeling, I'm not a fan of this cloak. Like, it looks quite thick. You can see the thickness of the cloak there. Whereas the old model was quite sweeping and looked, well, to me it looked a little bit better. So I've actually got the old model. I think I'm going to paint rather than the new one, but maybe I'll get the new one at some point. And some screamers and flamers. And some stormcast getting surrounded by these little horrors. And there we've got Kairos. And another large change. So really colourful models. I think a well-painted Tzeentch army is going to look amazing. So I think I'm going to put quite a lot of time and effort into making my Tzeentch look really nice. So here are the Arcanites charging into battle. Some Fire Slayers there. And that's the Cursed Lane there. And this is the Shaman on disc. So I might actually run multiples of him because he's so good, and he's only 120 points. And a lot of these new Zangors, the Enlightened and Skyfires, they're on these discs that can move 16 inches. And some of them, like the Skyfires, can even move 9 inches in the hero phase as well. So it's a very mobile army, or it can be a very mobile army. There we have a Volkark. So 1 in 10 of these Acolytes can equip a Volkark, which is basically like a bird that unbinds spells. So, you know, Tzeentch is all about magic and manipulation, so a lot of the rules kind of is all about changing the dice rolls, changing outcomes of things, and yeah, lots of special rules to keep track of. There we go, there's a Shaman, some nice pictures here. The Fate Master, I bought one of these, but I'm not actually that keen on the model. It looks maybe a little outdated compared to the rest, but still it's quite good rules wise, so until they come out with a new one, I'll probably be using that in the army. And then here we have the Enlightened and the Skyfire. So these are the guys I was talking about that are really mobile. The Enlightened are kind of the hand-to-hand guys, with the Aviarchs being the leader or champion. And then we have the Skyfires with their bows, which I can imagine these being quite popular. They're almost like Kurnoth Hunters, but with a little bit less wounds and kind of different damage mechanic. They're not as tanky, but they're more mobile. And then we have Zangors over here, and the Acolytes. So things like the Icon Bearer can do mortal wounds. Well, we'll get into the rules later, but there's some really nice rules that accompany these guys. And here we've got an example of somebody who's just built an army, just kind of talking about the different units and stuff he's got in there. And then where are we? Tides of Change. So here we're into the rules. So one of the main mechanics in Tzeentch is this use of destiny dice. So do we get to that yet? It's just the usual blurb about everything has to be Tzeentch for it to count as a Tzeentch army. And then battle traits, artifacts and so on. This is a bit of an evolution from the other Battletomes because, you know, with kind of the older Battletomes we didn't have the artifacts and some of the abilities, but this is kind of the more evolved version. And I think more of the Battletomes are going to be coming out like this, where we have kind of spell lores, we have multiple allegiance abilities and things like that. So it's split into 3 kind of mini factions within Tzeentch. You've got the Arcanites, which are the kind of covert guys. You've got the demons, and then you've got Tzeentch mortals. And a lot of people, a lot of you know, war scrolls will be like a mortal Arcanite, or you know, they can kind of cross across these kind of traits depending on what it is. But so the main allegiance ability here is Master of Destiny. So after setup, but before rolling to see who takes the first turn, you roll 9 dice. So this I'm a sucker for all the new Games Workshop stuff, so I mean I got some of these dice luckily before they went out of stock, but I mean, you don't need the fancy dice, you can use any dice here, but you roll 9 dice, and then you put them to one side. So whatever you rolled there is your destiny dice. And then, I think you're meant to use like the yellow ones or something for destiny dice, but it doesn't really matter. But these stay at the side for all game. And what you can do is, you can use these dice to affect your casting roll, unbinding roll, run, charge, hit, wound, save, damage, or battle shock tests. So you can't use it for like the priority roll, but you can use it for this type of thing. And what you do is you don't roll, and then if you get a bad result, you swap a dice. You basically have to say before you, like let's say you've got a charge and you need 8 inches. You don't roll 2 dice, and then if you fail it, you swap the dice. What you'd say is, okay, I'm going to take this 6, and I'm going to use that destiny dice. And then you would roll 1 other dice for your charge, and on a 2+, then you would have got the 8 that you need to make the charge. So you can kind of substitute as many dice as you like into your result before you roll it, which is really cool. So you can manipulate a lot of different things, and this destiny dice mechanic, there's lots of things that can affect that. When we dig into the war scrolls and so on, you'll see that there's ways you can bring destiny dice back and just keep your destiny. If your destiny dice is at a certain number, then you can get extra bonuses and so on. So that's basically what it says here. And then we have the Arcanite's command trait. So some of them are the same over the different ones, like Sorcerer, which gives you 2 additional spells from the Lore of Fate for the Arcanites, the Lore of Change for the demons, and the Lore of Fate for mortals. So there's 2 new spell lores, and that one just allows you to have more spells. Nexus of Fate. So if your general's on the battlefield at the start of your hero phase, roll a dice on a 1 or 6. You can choose to replace 1 destiny dice from your pool with the number you rolled. So even if you roll a 1 in your destiny dice pool, that might be quite useful for the battle shock phase. So you can basically use that to replace destiny dice, which you might want to do. Magical supremacy, so you can unbind within 27 inches instead of 18. And like I talked about before with the curse lin, that could be really effective because you can kind of cast spells back at them within 27 inches. Boundless mutations, so at the start of your hero phases, roll a dice on a 2 or more, your general heals d3 wounds. On a roll of a 1, your general suffers a wound. And if it results in their death, replace your general with Chaos Spawn. Obviously you don't do that in match play because the Chaos Spawn would actually cost you more points. Then we have here Cult Demagogue. Add 2 to the bravery of all friendly Tzeentch Arcanites within 9 inches of your general. And Arcane Sacrifice. So at the end of your hero phase, you can inflict d3 mortal wounds on a friendly unit within 3 of your general. And if you do so, then you can reroll any failed casting rolls for your general for the duration of the phase. So, and increase the range of any spells they cast by 9 inches. So that could potentially be really useful. So there's some really nice stuff here, not just in the Legion's abilities, but when we get into the artifacts and so on. And there's lots of different kind of synergies that are, they seem to be quite apparent. It looks like there's a lot to think about in this book. Here we've got for the demons, we've got the same first 3, and then Demon Spark, so add 1 to the damage characteristic of all your general's melee weapons. Here you must subtract 1 from any hit rolls that target your general in the combat phase, and you can reroll save rolls of a 1. And then mortals, same 3 again, Blessing of Tzeentch, so on a 6, you can roll a dice every time you suffer a wound or a mortal wound. On a 6, it's ignored. Soul Burn, each time you make a wound roll of a 6 or higher for your melee weapons, the target suffers 1 mortal wound in addition to its normal damage. And here we've got Illusionist, your opponent must subtract 1 from any hit rolls that target your general in the shooting phase. So some pretty cool ones there. I'm biggest fan of the Magical Supremacy and the Arcane Sacrifice, but there's some other cool ones there. Then we're on to the Artifacts of Power. So there's Artifacts of Power, and then on the next page we've got Demonic Gifts. they all count as artifacts of power for assigning them, you know, depending on how, because you know you usually get one artifact, and then you get one additional artifact for every battalion war scroll you have in your army. So depends on what it is. If it's a Tzeentch with a combination of well, if it's a demon hero, then you can give it a demonic gift, or if it's Arcanite hero or mortal hero, you can give it well, these artifacts of power, the treasures of the cults and the fated artifacts. So there's some really cool stuff here as well. Kind of ones that caught my eye is the soul draft. So once per battle you can roll 3 dice instead of 2 for casting or unbinding for the whole phase, and use the 2 highest. Wind Thief charm here. You can move the bearer up to double their move characteristic. That might be potentially quite useful. Over here we've got Time Slip Pendant. Once per battle, at the end of the combat phase, the bearer can enter a time slip and they can pile in an attack for a second time. So that could potentially be quite useful. Paradoxical Shield adds 2 to your save roll. However, you must reroll all successful save rolls. So that's quite a backwards effect, but it's pretty cool. And just some other ones there. And then on to the demonic gifts. So again, lots of different things here to look at. Aspect of Tzeentch: each time you expend a destiny dice whilst a demon is on the this demon is on the battlefield, roll a dice. On a 6 you may immediately roll another dice and add it to your destiny dice pool. So you've got the destiny dice pool of 9 to start with. You can use them during the game, but you can never have more than 9. So you know, you've got to kind of save them for the critical moments when you need them. And then we have the 2 spell lores. So we have the Lore of Fate, which is for the Arcanites, and yeah, Tzeentch Arcanite Wizards and or Tzeentch Mortal Wizards. And then we have the Lore of Change, which is for the demons, Demon Wizards. From a quick look over them, I think the Lore of Fate's quite a lot stronger. I mean, some of the things that really look good here to me is this Treacherous Bond. So cast value of 6. If successfully cast, pick a visible friendly unit within 18 of the caster until your next hero phase. As long as the bonded unit is within 9 inches of the caster, roll a dice whenever the caster suffers an unsaved wound or mortal wound. On a 2+, the chosen unit suffers the wound or mortal wound instead. So, you know, in Age of Sigmar, your heroes getting sniped off the board can be quite fatal, especially if you're relying on some of the command abilities and things that the heroes do. So being able to protect your general or whoever it is that you give the Treacherous Bond, I think that's going to be really useful. So you know, a lot of the small characters that are on foot with sort of 5 or 6 wounds, you know, they can get knocked off the board so quickly that this is a massive buff to their survivability. So I think I'm going to be going with that quite a lot, especially if I use the Cursed Lyn as my general, because he's only got 5 wounds and I think a 4+ save, so he's not that hard to kill. Also here we've got Glimpse of the Future, which only one of your wizards can attempt to cast a spell per turn. If successfully cast, roll a dice and add it to your destiny pool. So that's really good. Get an extra dice back every turn. And also Shield of Fate. So this is another really interesting one for like the Arcanites, well, and the Zangors, I guess, because what it does is it basically allows you to re-roll any failed save rolls depending on how many destiny dice you have in your pool. So if you've got 1 to 3 destiny dice in the pool, then you can re-roll save rolls of a 1 for the unit. If you have 4 to 6 destiny dice, you can re-roll save rolls of a 1 or a 2. And if you have between 7 and 9, you can re-roll all failed rolls of a 1, 2, and 3. So if you've got a unit with, let's say, a 5+ save normally, like I think the Zangors, and you have between 7 and 9 destiny dice, and you cast Shield of Fate on them, you could have a big unit of them, then any 1, 2s, and 3s you're re-rolling. So that's a really strong spell, I think, defensively. And then we've got some offensive ones here. Bolt of Tzeentch is basically a D6 mortal wounds, so souped up arcane bolt. And then on to lore change. So some more really interesting spells here. Tzeentch's Firestorm. So cast value 9. If successful, pick a unit within 18 inches, roll 9 dice, and for each 6 that you roll, the unit picked suffers D3 mortal wounds. So that could potentially put out 27 mortal wounds if you were extremely lucky, or if you you could use your destiny dice to make spells like that do a lot more damage. Then we have Fold Reality. So cast value 7. Pick a friendly unit of Tzeentch demons within 18 and roll a dice. On a 2 or more, you can return that many slain models to the unit. On a roll of a 1, the unit is wiped out. So quite a good replenishing spell there, but if you roll a 1 and the unit's wiped out. But yeah, what else do we have here? Bolt of Tzeentch again, and just some other cool spells. So that's the two lores that we have there. And then we go into some battle plans. So a Banquet of Magic. And then the Skeins of Fate. And then there's a little section here on running a Path to Glory with your Tzeentch army, which looks pretty cool. I've never tried the Path to Glory, but I did read through this and I thought, man, that's quite a good idea actually. It would be quite fun to do it with some friends. I don't know if you guys have run Path to Glory before, but what are your thoughts on it? Did you enjoy it? And then, yet more Path to Glory. A little bit of text here about collecting a Tzeentch army. And then into the War Scrolls, into the juicy parts. So, it starts with some demon battalions, and then we have the Arcanite battalions. So, the Warp Flame host here, and right at the back of the book, they've got all of the points for everything. So, maybe we'll just gloss over that quickly first. So here we have all of the formations down here. So one thing I noticed immediately is that all of the formations are quite low in points cost, so they're all between kind of 20 points and 80 points. And you know, there's quite a lot of different formations here, and then we have the kind of the larger formations that are a combination of the smaller formations. So I imagine you're going to have quite a few artifacts if you go this route in your army construction. So see, we've got demons up to here, and then we've got Arcanites covering these pages here, and then it's into the War Scrolls. So just some quick notes on the points here. So we've got the Acolytes and the Tzangors as battle line. We also have Pink Horrors as battle line, and Burning Chariots of Tzeentch, their battle line if the army has Tzeentch Demon Allegiance and its general is the Herald on the Burning Chariot. Sort of the Acolytes are 140 points for 10, and they're 1 wound each, which is relatively expensive, but when we see the War Scroll we'll see maybe why. And then Tzangors, which are 180 points for 10, and they have 2 wounds each, so you're getting 20 wounds for 180 points, which is not bad value at all. Maybe compared to Savage Orcs, maybe it's not so great, but the Tzangors have got some cool rules that go with them. And Pink Horrors, 140 points for 10. And then the Skyfires and then Lightened, they're the guys on the discs, they're 160 points for 3. And in the Cabal, which is kind of the center of the Arcanite army, you usually have at least 3 of, you can pick either the Magister, the Tzangor Shaman, or the Fate Master. So they're 140 points for Fate Master, and the Magister is 120, and we have the Shaman at 120. So first battalion here, Warp Flame Host, 1 Exalted Flamer of Tzeentch, and 3 or more units from any combination of Exalted Flamers, Flamers, or Burned Chariots. And that is, I think it is 20, is it 20 points? 30 points for that formation, and it gives you, so great is the roiling tide of warp fire surrounding a Warp Flame Host that to merely stand in close proximity to demons is to risk being set alight. So in each of your hero phases, roll a dice for each enemy unit that is within 9 of a unit from a Warp Flame Host, and on a 6 they take a d3 mortal wounds. So not amazing, but it's quite a cheap formation. You know, you can use these formations to get extra artifacts and to reduce the number of drops on the table as well. So you know, it's not only for that ability that you might want to take that. Then we have the Multitudinous Host, which is a combination of Herald of Tzeentch and 8 or more units in any combination: pink horrors, blue horrors, and brimstone horrors. And you know, you might think, oh well, 8 units, that's going to be quite expensive, but when you look at the points cost for the horrors, well, pink horrors are 140 for 10, but then blue horrors are 50 points for 10, so that's already quite cheap, and brimstone horrors are 40 points for 10. So you know, potentially you could go for 8 units of brimstones, and you're talking about kind of 320 points just to flesh out that formation if you wanted. And the ability here is, so in each of your hero phases you add d6 models to each unit of pink horrors and blue horrors, and you add the d3 models to the brimstone horrors. And that formation, Multitudinous Host, is 30 points as well, so quite cheap. You know, in match play you can't add models above the starting size of the unit, but it can be quite good just to get models back. Then we have the Ether Eater Host, which is 1 Herald of Tzeentch on a Burning Chariot, and then 3 or more in any combination: Blue Scribes, Herald of Tzeentch on Chariot, Herald of Tzeentch on Disc, or Screamers of Tzeentch. And the Ether Eater Host is 40 points. And its ability here: though all demons are manifested from raw magic, those of the Ether Eater Host can drain the sorcerer's energies unleashed by their foes to revitalize their physical forms. If a unit from the host successfully unbinds a spell cast by an enemy model, they immediately heal d3 wounds. While an Ether Eater Host has 9 or more units, then any units of Screamers from the battalion can attempt to unbind 1 spell in each enemy hero phase. So maybe situationally good. And here we've got the first battalion that includes the Lord of Change. So this is a Change Host, and we have Lord of Change and 8 or more of the following: a Horror Hero, and you can see in bold that's a keyword, so it's anything that has the horror and the hero keyword in it. I think Games Workshop is trying to be a bit more consistent with the way that they mark these units, because there's been quite a lot of confusion in the past. So I think from this point onwards, wherever they put a bold writing in, it means a keyword, and if it's not in bold, it means an actual war scroll name. So the Change Host, that is 60 points. And this is quite an interesting one, because what you can do is you can actually swap the position of 2 units in this host in the hero phase, as long as they're within 27 inches, I believe. Let's see, yeah, within 27 inches. You can pick a pair of units from this battalion that are within 27 inches of the battalion's Lord of Change to swap places. And to do so, you take 1 model from each and swap them. Then you remove all of the models, and then you set them back up within 9 inches of the original model that you left there on the table. And while you have more than 9 units, or whilst the Change Host has 9 or more units, then you can do 2 different pairs of units. And if you've got 18 or more units, then 3 different pairs of units. So you could effectively use this to pull units out of combat by just, like, let's say you've got a unit of pink horrors in combat and another unit of blue horrors over here. You switch places, but you choose the back model in the pink horrors to be your switching point. And then when you set up your blue horrors over here, you basically set them up out with 3 inches of the enemy unit that they're in. So I can see some uses for that, but I'm not sure really how useful that's going to be. But you know, all this stuff's new, so I'm going to need some time to think about it. Here we've got the Overseer's Fate Twisters. So this is 1 Lord of Change again, with 8 or more units in any combination: Horror, Hero, Exalted Flamers, or Burning Chariots. And this is quite a strong one of the more expensive battalions. It is 80 points, and the abilities here is the Will of Tzeentch. So at the start of each of your hero phases, add 1 dice to your destiny pool whilst at least 1 model from this battalion is on the battlefield. So that's quite strong, because you're getting 1 more destiny dice a turn. And you know, if you're using some of the other mechanics to get destiny dice, you can potentially be replenishing your destiny dice quite fast. And in addition, you can choose to substitute dice rolls that you've already made with destiny dice. So rather than substituting them before rolling, whilst there's 9 or more models. And then we have Master of Fate. So if the Lord of Change from this battalion is on the battlefield, then in each of your hero phases you can choose to re-roll the result of 1 of the dice in your destiny dice pool. So you know, maybe you want to kind of focus on keeping 1s and 6s because they're kind of the most useful. So you know, maybe your 2s and 3s, you just every turn you take 1 of your 2s and re-roll it. So that's quite a nice formation, that one. Then we have the Omniscient Oracles. So Kairos Fate Weaver and 3 Lords of Change. So Kairos he's gone up in points. He's now 340 points, and the Lord of Change is 300 points. But their war scrolls have been improved. And here, knowledge of past, present, and future. So Kairos has, you can reroll any hit, wound, save, and run rolls of a 1, as well as any dice rolls of a 1 in a charge roll for models from this battalion. I can't really see that getting used too much because it's so points heavy, and you know, if you take them 4, that's basically what, 1240 points. So yeah, I'm not sure whether that'll get much use, especially with Kairos being a bit nerfed, but quite fun anyway. And then we have in purple, we have the kind of the battalion of battalions. So we have some of these battalions in here. So we have the Eternal Conflagration, which is like quite fire orientated, and that includes 1 Lord of Change or Overseer's Fate Twisters and 1 Warpflame Host, but it says that it must contain at least 6 units. So the Warpflame Host is you know, just by this it could potentially only have 4 units in it, 1 Exalted and 3 of the below. But it specifically said that you must contain at least 6 units from in this Warpflame Host to be part of this conflagration. And then on top of that, you can add 0 to 8 War Scroll battalions from basically any of them other demon formations, and any number of additional Tzeentch demon units. So quite flexible there. You also get some extra rules if you take the maximum number of battalions. You get the Destiny Preordained ability, which was from page 104. Destiny Preordained means that when generating your Destiny dice pool at the start of the battle, you can choose the results of 3 of the dice before rolling the remaining 6. So that's pretty strong. You know, you can maybe make 2 6s and a 1, just so you're covered for battle shock and some nice dice rolling. But you know, you'd need the maximum number of battalions to do that, which would be 8 from here plus this. So you're talking about way over 2,000 points there. So that won't really apply most of the time for both of these, I don't think. So the Eternal Conflagration, that also has a point cost. It is 40 points. And Pawns of the Radiant Lord. So the Flamers of the Eternal Conflagrations are extensions of their Overseer's will, and the Greater Demon uses them as such, channeling destructive magics through them, regardless of cost, to achieve its own ends. When the Lord of Change that must be taken in this battalion attempts to cast a spell, you can select any Flamer from this battalion to act as the casting model. Range, visibility, and so on are all measured from that model. So you're basically using the Flamers as kind of turrets to cast spells from your Lord of Change. You know, and if you've got like the Overseer's Fate Twisters, where you've got a couple of them, that could potentially be quite fun. And then also Coruscating Flames, so your opponent must subtract 1 from any hit rolls that target the Flamers or Exalted Flamers in the shooting phase. And then we have the Host Duplicitous. So here we have 1 Lord of Change and 1 Change Host. And the Change Host must contain at least 3 horror heroes. So the Change Host here was a combination of basically 1 Lord of Change and 8 or more units of horrors, flamers, screamers, burning chariots. And then you also get, you know, you can have 0 to 8 of them other battalions, just like we had here, and any number of additional Tzeentch demon units. And what this gives you is a Glamour Smiths. So when a wizard from this battalion rolls a 1 on any dice as part of the casting roll, count it as a 2 instead. So potentially useful. Let's see how many points it is. The Host Duplicitous is 50 points, so not too expensive. And then also, wizards belonging to the Host Duplicitous, they know the following spell, which is Scintillating Simulacra. So cast value of 6. If successfully cast, pick an enemy unit within 18 inches of the caster. Until the start of your next hero phase, any successful hit and wound rolls your opponent makes for the unit you picked automatically fail. Conversely, any failed hit and wound rolls your opponent makes for them are automatically successful. So, so he fails all his hit and wound rolls. So all his successes are fails, and all his fails are successes, which could be potentially quite useful. And that's pretty much it for the demons. So that's all the demon formations covered, and then we get into the Arcanites. So, you know, from reading this book and having a look through it, I'm kind of leaning towards Arcanites quite a lot here, but I also love the Lord of Change model, so I don't know, I'm probably going to end up with a combination of both. But so we'll start here with the Arcanite Cult. So that has 1 Arcanite Cabal, which is this formation here, and then has a number of the other formations later on. So maybe we'll come back to this one. So the start of the Arcanite army is really the Cabal. So you've got 3 to 9 units in any combination of the following: Fate Master, Magister, and Zangor Shaman. And points for the Cabal is 50 points. So pretty much if you're using formations, you'll definitely have the Arcanite Cabal if you're making an Arcanite's army. So you'll have 3 spellcasters. And it's really strong because if the Cabal of Sorcerers, if you're within 9 inches of at least 2 other models in this formation, you can attempt to cast 1 additional spell, which is pretty strong. You know, when you've got 3 or 4 of these, you might want more than 3 just so you can keep using this even if 1 gets sniped off the field. But they all cast an extra spell, which is really, really good. And then we have Master of the Cults. So each time you use a Destiny dice to predetermine a dice roll for the Master of the Cult, so you pick one of these guys to be the Master, and every time you use a Destiny dice for him, you roll again, and on a 4+, you can roll another dice and immediately add it to your Destiny dice pool. So it's another way of bringing back the Destiny dice. And then we have the Covens, which, you know, as per the structure chart at the start, let's see here. So we have the Covens, we have the Arcanite Cabal, and then we have the Covens. And then we have over here the Ogroid Thaumaturge and Curselings as henchmen, and the Gaunt Summoner as honoured guests. But basically the Arcanite army is the Cabal, and then you have the Covens that come off it. So we've got an Alterkin Coven here, which is 1 unit of Kyrok Acolytes, 1 unit of Zangors, and 1 unit of Skyfires. And their ability is, in each of your hero phases, roll a dice for each enemy unit within 3 inches of a unit from this coven. On a 6, the unit suffers a d3 mortal wounds. If any models are slain, they are blessed and transmogrified into its Zangor. If there is already a friendly Zangor unit within 6 inches of the slain model's unit, add the Zangor to the unit. Otherwise set it up as a new unit. So in match play, when you get a rule like this which sets up a new unit, you have to pay reinforcement points for it. But if you've got an existing unit that's been damaged, that's within range, you can add Tzaangors back and you wouldn't be paying reinforcement points for it, because by the wording here, if you already have a friendly unit within 6 inches, add the Tzaangor to the unit. So as long as you don't go over the starting size of the Tzaangor unit, you can use this to bring back Tzaangors, which is quite good. And the Skyfires are really good. Tzaangors and Acolytes are really good. So that's quite a nice one there. Then we have the Witchfire Coven, which is 2 units of Carrick Acolytes, which are these guys, and 1 unit of Tzaangor Enlightened, which are the Tzaangors that are on discs with like hand-to-hand weapons. And they've got this formation, I think, is one of the stronger ones. I really like it because this Master of Weird Flame, so the Acolytes that form the Coven, they can make their Sorcerer's Bolt attack, which is their like missile attack, you can make it in your hero phase as well as your shooting phase. So you basically get to shoot twice with your unit by having them in this Witchfire Coven. And there's other ways that you can buff their shooting, so that can be potentially really strong. The only downside I see is I'm not a big fan of the Tzaangor Enlightened from reading the rules, and they're the same points as the Skyfires, but I can't see them being quite as effective. So the Witchfire Coven there, that is 60 points, so kind of medium price, but if you've got big units of Acolytes that are shooting twice in a turn, that could potentially be really, really good. Then we have the Sky Shoal Coven, so this is more of kind of shooty coven here. We've got 1 unit of Tzaangor Enlightened and 2 Tzaangor Skyfire units. So their special ability is Scintillating Attack Run. In each of your hero phases, you can move any units from the Sky Shoal Coven up to 9 inches as if it was the movement phase. So they've got a 16-inch move anyway, and if you can move 9 in the hero phase and then 16, and then potentially charge 12, you're talking about like 16 plus 9 is 25 plus 12, that's 37-inch threat range, which is really strong. Like the mobility of these guys on discs is crazy. And that Sky Shoal Coven is 80 points, so that's quite an expensive one. One of the most expensive ones. Then we have the Tzaangor Coven over here. So that's 1 unit of Tzaangors, 1 unit of Enlightened Tzaangors, and 1 unit of Skyfires. And their abilities are basically buffs the vicious beak attacks made by the Tzaangor Coven. So they wound on a 4+ instead of 5+. And then if any Tzaangors from the Coven are within 9 inches of a unit, the battalion's unit of Enlightened or Skyfires at the start of the hero phase, they can pile in an attack as if it were the combat phase. So you can basically have your Tzaangors attacking in the hero phase and then attacking again in the combat phase, which sounds amazing. And Tzaangors, if you run them in big units, when we get to the war scrolls you'll see this, they can be pretty lethal considering their points cost, because they get more attacks as the unit size goes up. And the Tzaangor Coven is 40 points, so that's quite a cheap one. So that's all of the covens, the kind of small formations, and then again we go into the bigger formations, the formation of formations, the battalion formations, these 2 for the Arcanites. So we've got the Cult of Transient Form, which is 1 Arcanite Cabal, which is the spellcasters like we talked about, the Magister, the Fate Master, and Tzaangor Shaman, or kind of 3 of them in any combination. And then we have 1 Alterkin Coven, but the restriction here is that the Tzaangor unit must contain at least 20 models. So this is Alterkin Coven, 1 unit of Acolytes, 1 unit of Tzaangors, 1 unit of Tzaangor Skyfires, and they have to be at least 20 strong, and then you can add any of the other smaller covens, or the other covens, you can add them as you like, up to 8, and any number of additional Arcanite units. And yeah, if you can get 3 covens in, then you get the Destiny, Preordained, and Strength and Conviction abilities, which is being able to choose the 3 dice at the start of the game when you roll your Destiny dice. And you can also get Strength and Conviction, which adds 1 to the bravery of all models in the Arcanite cult, which is quite useful. But you know, points wise, you'll be struggling to get 3 of the covens in there. And the main ability from this is roll a dice each time an acolyte from the cult of the transient form is slain, and on a 6, then they basically bring back a Tzaangor if there's a friendly Tzaangor unit within 6 inch of the slain model's unit. So if you run the acolytes near the Tzaangors and any of the acolytes die, then you can potentially restore Tzaangors. Obviously not going above the kind of starting size of Tzaangor units. And that, the Cult of the Transient Form, that is 60 points. And then we have the Pyrophane Cult. So this is one of my favorite ones. I'm trying to write a list around this at the moment, where you have an Arcanite Cabal, you have 1 Witchfire Coven, which is the one that I was talking about. You know, you can shoot in the hero phase, and then you can shoot in the shooting phase with the acolytes, which is really strong. But the acolytes have to contain at least 20 models. So you know, the acolytes are 140 points for 10, so you're talking about 280 points for just that unit of acolytes. But then, because the Witchfire Coven also requires 2 units of them, so you need 40 acolytes basically, so that's like 480, well 280, so it's 540 points for the acolytes, and then 1 unit of Tzaangor Enlightened, which I'm not keen on the Enlightened, but for this rule it might be worth running them. And then you can have, just like over here, any combination of the other covens and so on. And the special abilities here is you can add 1 to the wound rolls of the Sorcerer's Bolt attacks made by the acolytes from the cult for each other unit in the battalion that has attacked the target unit with the Sorcerer's Bolts. So if you've got multiple units of the acolytes, so the first unit, when we go to the acolytes war scroll, they are hitting on, normally their Sorcerer's Bolts are hitting on 5s, wounding on 4s. But if you have, first of all, you get a +1 to hit if you have a Tzeentch wizard within 9 inches. So you'd always want to, like for me, I'd run the Curseling with that unit, so they always get the +1. So they'd normally be hitting on 4s, wounding on 4s. And then with this Arc Pyromancers, normally they wound on 4s. So your first unit that shoots would be wounded on 4s, then your second unit that shoots the same target would be wounded on 3s, and your third unit would be wounded on 2s. So, you know, you can maybe have a couple of small units of acolytes in this cult, that, you know, units of 10 that do the initial shooting, and then you keep your bigger units, the units of 20, for shooting afterwards, and they're obviously wounding on a 2+. So, and if you're doing that in the hero phase and the shooting phase, because you're running Witchfire Covens in here, then you're getting quite a lot of attacks in the shooting phase and hero phase. So that's potentially really good. I really want to test that out. And also, you know, wizards in the cult, they know an additional spell, which is Flickering Fires of Tzeentch. So a cast value of 7. If successfully cast, pick a visible enemy unit within 18 inches of the caster. The unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. In addition, roll a dice for each enemy unit within 3 inches of that unit that you picked, and on a 4 or more, them units suffer D3 mortal wounds. So quite a good offensive spell there that all of your wizards will know. And you know, because of the Arcanite Cabal, all of the sorcerers in here, they can cast an extra spell. So you know, you're potentially going to have a lot of different spells that you can try and cast. And I'm not sure if I mentioned it before when I was going through the different spell lores. Each wizard, they get, in addition to their war scroll, they get 1 spell from them spell lore. So if it's a Arcanite or a Mortal, the wizard gets 1 that they can pick from that table. And you can have multiple wizards having the same spell if you want. and the same with demons, they can pick from their demon table. So yeah, potentially the magic phase is probably going to be huge for this army. It's going to be a lot of things going on, a lot of mortal wound output, I think, and some other cool stuff, manipulating destiny dice. So that is all of the battalion war scrolls. So there's some really interesting things to think about there, and then we'll just jump into the war scrolls. So here we have the Lord of Change and Kairos. They've gone up in their number of wounds, and Kairos has lost his ability to change the priority roll. Apart from that, you know, not too much of a change. And then we have the Heralds. So some pretty cool stuff here. And then the Changeling, which is a really interesting unit. I've never played with him, but he can potentially stop other units from moving or getting them. I think he gets them to attack. They can attack with one weapon themselves, which is could be pretty funny, like in Nagash handed Dustin himself. And then Herald Tzeentch, Blue Scribes, Screamers. Excuse me. Then we get into Burning Chariots, Exalted Flamers of Tzeentch, Normal Flamers, and then we have the Horrors. So I think I'm probably going to start an Arcanite army to start with, and then maybe add demons, or maybe Arcanites and have a Lord of Change, and then kind of add demons afterwards. Because the Arcanites, kind of the fluff and the models look really cool. Here's the Tzangor Shaman. He's a really important one, I think, for the Arcanites. And the Gaunt Summoner. The Gaunt Summoner is only 100 points. So lots of offensive spells here, Infernal Flames. Then we have the Curseling, which is kind of my favorite at the moment. You know, being able to unbind a wizard spell within 27 inches and then cast it back at them. That just seems like it, you know, make some amazing games. And then we have Magister and Fate Master, so that's really the Arcanite Cabal, your choice of 3 or more of them. Then the Ogroid Thaumaturge, which I'm not a massive fan of. He's got a nice spell, the Fire Blast. Cast value 7, d6 mortal wounds. After the damage has been inflicted, you can set up a unit of pink, blue, or brimstone horrors, but you know, you'd be paying reinforcement points for that. So it's really just a d6 mortal wounds. And the Ogroid Thaumaturge is like 180 points. 160 points. So I think he's quite expensive for what he is, but he does have 8 wounds, and he when he charges, he does d3 mortal wounds on the charge, so he's kind of a hybrid fighty caster type model. Then we have the new battle line. We have the Tzangors, 2 wounds each. Now these are really cool because they've got a special rule here that is you can make 1 additional attack for each model in this unit with its Savage Blade, 2 Savage Blades, or Savage Great Blade for every 9 models in the unit, up to a maximum of 3 additional attacks per model. So if you've got at least 27 Tzangors in a unit, then they'll all get 3 additional attacks per model. So you know, their base stats are kind of 2 wounds, save 5, bravery 5. Doesn't look too amazing, but I mean, still they're kind of okay for battle line. And then you've got some special weapons in here. So I think it is 2 in every 5 models can be armed with double-handed Savage Great Blades. And then you have an Icon Bearer. And you can equip them with shields, so they've got a 6+ mortal wound save or normal save on top of their normal armor save. So you can potentially get, you know, 5 attacks with the Savage Blade, 4 attacks with the Great Blade, 4 attacks with the well, no, it doesn't apply to the Vicious Beak, it applies to the blades. But still, if you've got a big unit, like let's say you want to run 30 of them, and you're using one of them war scrolls that replenish them as they die, so hopefully you wouldn't, you know, they wouldn't get knocked off the table. I mean, 30 of them, that's 60 wounds. Very unlikely they're going to get knocked off in one turn. So if you're using some of them other formations to replenish them, and at the same time you're getting all these extra attacks from them, and you know, the spell that I was talking about before, where you can reroll a save roll of a 1, 2, or 3, a failed save roll, if you have 7 to 9 destiny dice. So you know, if you can potentially kind of buff these guys up. So if you run him, let's say you run a big unit of Tzangors, 30 of them with a Curseling, and the Curseling he's got his treacherous bond on them, so the Curseling is quite tanky, you know, because the Tzangors are going to basically eat all of the wounds. And then, you know, he casts Inspiring Presence on the Tzangors, so the Battle Shock immune. And then you've got the kind of the save spell on them, and then they're re-rolling any failed saves on 6s with Arcanite shields. At the same time they're getting all these attacks. It could be quite a nice block of you know, resilient troops that are putting out lots of damage because of these extra attacks. So they look really cool. But the Acolytes look so good as well because of this formation that allows you to shoot in the hero phase and the shooting phase. So kind of torn between whether I want to go for 2 big blocks of 20 Acolytes, getting them to shoot in the hero phase and the shooting phase, or go for the Tzangors and you know, just buffing them up with all these extra attacks. I mean, they don't have any missile attacks. Well, actually, saying that though, they do have the Icon Bearers, which if you have an Icon Bearer, then at the start of your hero phase, take a dice for each wizard within 9 inches of this unit, then pick an enemy unit within 18 inches and roll the dice. On a 4 or more, that unit suffers a mortal wound. So if you run your Cabal, let's say you have, I mean, you've got a minimum of 3, but let's say you take 4 or 5 wizards, because you'd want more than 3 so that you can get the extra spells. You know, for every wizard that is within 9 inches of these, the Icon Bearer can basically shoot out a mortal wound on a 4+ to a unit within 18. So you basically, for every Icon Bearer, you're putting out 5 mortal wounds on 4+s. But you know, if you take that further and you say, why don't we have 1 block of 30 Tzangor, and then we have a couple of units of 10 Tzangor, all of them have Icon Bearers, and you have them kind of surrounding your Cabal in the middle. Each one of them units, their Icon Bearers is pumping out 5 mortal wounds on a 4+. So that's on top of all these other things that they've got going for them. So, you know, they're just an amazing unit. They seem like an amazing unit. And then when we get to the Acolytes, we have, you know, it says here Sorcerer's Bolt's 12-inch range, but if you have 1 in 10 models can have a Scroll of the Dark Arts. If you have that equipped, then you can increase the range of the Sorcerer's Bolts to 18 inches. So they're basically always going to be 18 inches because you can keep that guy on until the end. And you've also got this Volcark, so that's the bird. 1 in 10 models can have it. And it can basically, on a roll of a 5 or more, the wizard... Yeah, basically when an enemy wizard successfully casts a spell, on a roll of a 5 or more, he suffers a mortal wound. So it can punish casters for casting. So yeah, the Acolytes are really good as well. So pretty interesting war scrolls. The Enlightened, like I said, I'm not that big a fan of these guys. They get an extra wound if they're on the disc, which you would take the disc all the time because you basically get it for free if you're playing match play. I can't see anybody assembling these without the discs. And just some little abilities here that buff their combat. So on both of these units, well, actually no, on the Skyfires, if you're within range of a Shaman, a Tzangor Shaman, you get an extra +1 to hit. But with the Enlightened, I can't remember. Yeah, if the unit is within 9 inches of Tzangor Shaman at the start of the combat phase, add 1 to hit rolls. So the Tzangor Shamans, as well as being part of your Cabal, are helping buff these guys on discs. So the Skyfires I do like the look of because they have this Arrow of Fate, which is just 1 attack, 24-inch range. You get +1 to hit because you'll usually run the Shaman near them, so they'll be hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s. But because of that +1 to hit, they've got this special rule that if the hit roll for the Arrow of Fate is a 6 or more, the attack sequence ends and the target suffers D3 mortal wounds. So because if you keep the Shaman within 9 inches, that'll be doing a D3 mortal wounds on a 5+. You know, you could potentially run maybe 9 of these. There are 160 points for 3. And you know, then you've got 9 shots that are when they hit on a 5+, they're doing a D3 mortal wounds at 24-inch range, which is not too shabby. So I quite like the look of them, especially in Chaos. You know, you're kind of lacking some of the shooting that other armies have, so I do like the look of that. And then Chaos Spawn, and that's it. Rules again, and into pitched battle profiles, like we looked at the points here. So I mean, I threw together some ideas. I was just looking at points. What I think of doing is maybe if I run an Arcanite list, maybe taking the Cursed Lane with that magical supremacy. So he's got a 27-inch unbind, giving him the treacherous bond so that he can, you know, any wounds he takes on a 2+, he can send it into the unit next to him, which in this case would be the Acolytes, and giving him that soul draft, the artifact that gives him 3 dice for the whole turn casting and unbinding. So, you know, with 3 dice unbinding, he's likely to unbind even a good spellcaster, and then you know, you could use your fate dice if you want, your destiny dice if you wanted to, and then he'll be like sucking spells and spitting them back out. And then taking the Arcanite Cabal, which would be like, for me, I was thinking in this list 2 of them Sangor Shamans on discs, a Fate Master and a Magister, then 2 Witchfire Covens, one of them with 2 units of 20 Acolytes, and the other Coven with 2 units of 10, and that pretty much comes, that's about 90 and 30 points or so. I did try and see points wise how it would look if instead of taking the shooty Acolytes, going for the 30 Sangor and Skyfires, and I kind of came up to around about similar sort of points, 1900 with 30 Sangors, 20 Acolytes, because you're going to still need units for objective grabbing. You can't all block them into the Sangors. So yeah, it looks like there's quite a bit of flexibility with the different covens and so on. I did kind of want to put the Lord of Change into the list, but you know, you really want to keep your drops down if you can. Like if you keep this as a 1-drop list, like either the Cult of Transient Form or the Pyrophane Cult, you're still got what looks like a relatively competitive army, probably quite a competitive army. It just needs to be tested, and you've got 1 drop. So even against like Warrior Brotherhood and so on, you can you know, half the time you'll be able to dictate who takes the first turn, which is really a big advantage, I think, when you don't have much defense against the drops, which it doesn't appear this does have within the Battletome, because you know, even your cheapest chaff is kind of okay, I guess, if you're going demons, because then you've got Brimstone Horrors, which are only 40 points for 10 of them, so they're really cheap chaff. But in the Arcanites, your cheapest units are really the Acolytes, and you know, 140 points for 10 wounds. I don't really want to use my Acolytes as chaff. So yeah, lots of interesting stuff there. I'll kind of leave this review at that. We've been through the whole book. It's going to take some time to absorb these war scrolls a bit more, and you know, think about using the different battalions. But I really enjoyed reading the book, and I think that there's going to be some very competitive armies coming out of this. So that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. And yeah, I hope you learned something, and for all of you that are starting at Tzeentch Army, good luck. I think it's going to be an amazing army, and I'm sure we're going to see this in competitive play quite a lot. So until next time, guys, we'll see you later.